Do you ever hear the words leaving your mouth and wish you could grab them and pull them right back? It's a feeling I became all too familiar with a few years ago, not in a public space or with a stranger, but with the very people I love most in this world, my grown children. I thought our relationship was strong, a bond built on decades of love and trust, but I started to notice a shift, a subtle distance in our conversations, a hesitation where there once was openness. I realized, with a heavy heart, that the foundation I thought was solid rock was showing hairline cracks, and I was the one holding the hammer. I was speaking to my adult children with the language of their childhood, and in doing so, I wasn't honoring the capable, wonderful adults they had become. I had to learn that a parent's love doesn't get smaller as children get older, but its shape must change. Today, I want to share the 4 things I stopped saying to my grown kids. 4 simple shifts in language that didn't just mend those cracks, but transformed our bond into something deeper and more resilient than I ever imagined. The first phrase I had to permanently retire from my vocabulary was, "Are you sure you can afford that?" It seems harmless, doesn't it? A simple question born of genuine concern. As a retired librarian who also spent years helping people with financial planning, my mind is naturally wired to assess risk and plan for the future. When my daughter first told me she was booking a 2-week trip to Costa Rica, my internal alarm bells started ringing. I saw a spreadsheet of expenses, of lost income, of a depleted emergency fund. The words were on the tip of my tongue, that cautious, maternal question. But I caught myself. I looked at her face, lit up with excitement and pride. She wasn't a teenager asking for an advance on her allowance. She was a grown woman who had researched, saved, and planned for an adventure that was hers and hers alone. My question, however well-intentioned, would have sounded like doubt. It would have implied that I didn't trust her judgment, that I still saw her as someone who needed my oversight on her life's ledger. So I took a breath, and instead I said, "That sounds absolutely incredible. Tell me what you're most excited to see." The change in her expression was immediate. The faint, defensive tension in her shoulders melted away, replaced by pure joy as she pulled out her phone to show me pictures of the rainforest lodge she'd found. A few weeks later, unprompted, she walked me through her savings plan for the trip. She didn't do it to seek my approval, but to share her accomplishment. She had been responsible all along. My trust was the soil she needed to flourish, not my unsolicited audit. It might be worth asking yourself what your loving concern sounds like on the other end. Is it a safety net or is it a cage? I learned that our children don't need us to be their financial planners forever. They need us to be their most steadfast believers. The second thing I stopped doing was offering unsolicited advice, especially when it began with the phrase, "Well, when I was your age." Oh, that one is a classic, isn't it? We think we're offering a map from our own hard-won experience, but what our children often hear is that their map is wrong. The world my son is navigating in his career is profoundly different from the one I entered decades ago. The paths to success, to stability, to fulfillment, they've all changed. I was complaining to my dear friend Grace about this one afternoon. She has such a wonderful way with people, a deep and patient wisdom that comes from years of truly listening. I was fretting over my son's decision to leave a stable job to join a small startup. It felt reckless to me. I wanted to tell him about the importance of pensions and a steady climb up the corporate ladder. Grace listened quietly, and when I was done, she simply said, "Hazel, our job isn't to give them our old script. It's to give them a standing ovation as they write their own." Her words struck me to the core. Later that week, when my son called, I put Grace's wisdom into practice. I silenced the voice in my head that wanted to preach caution,
Instead of starting with my own stories, I asked him about his. I asked what excited him about this new venture, what he was afraid of, and what he hoped to create. It was one of the most honest conversations we'd ever had. He didn't need my outdated map. He just needed to know that I saw his courage as he navigated his own wilderness. We are the keepers of their stories, the witnesses to their lives. Our role has shifted from director to devoted audience member, and the most loving thing we can do is simply watch with wonder as their unique story unfolds. If something in this is resonating with you, I'd be so grateful to know. You might just type "I'm listening" in the comments below, so we know we're in this together. It helps to know we are not alone on this path. The third phrase I had to banish was any version of "you should visit more often." This one came from a place of loneliness, a quiet ache that can sometimes settle in when the house is still. My life is full. I travel, I have my friends, my projects. I've always cherished my independence. But there are moments when the silence can feel a little too loud. In one of those moments, I was scrolling through photos of a recent family get-together and felt a pang of sadness. I picked up the phone and the words, "It feels like I never see you anymore," were ready to fly. But I stopped. I thought about what I was really asking. I was asking them to be the cure for my loneliness, to put their busy lives on hold to fill a void in mine. That is a heavy burden to place on a child. And love should be a gift, not a debt. I realized I had to be the source of my own joy. My friend Arthur, who lost his dear Eleanor a few years back, once told me he thinks of happiness as a garden he must tend to every single day. I can't expect my children to be my gardeners. So I put down the phone and booked the train ticket for a weekend trip I'd been wanting to take. I started filling my own cup with so much life, so much adventure, that it began to overflow. I replaced the guilt-inducing statements with invitations. Instead of, "When are you coming to visit?" I started saying, "I just found this wonderful new hiking trail. I'd love to show it to you sometime if you're free." Or, "I'm planning a trip to the coast in May. The offer is always open if you'd like to join." It shifted the dynamic entirely. Time together became an opportunity for shared joy, not an obligation to manage my emotions. We must build a life so full and vibrant that our children's presence is a delightful bonus, not the main requirement for our own happiness. Finally, the fourth and perhaps most important question I stopped asking was, are you ever going to, you can fill in the blank, get married, buy a house, have a baby, settle down? We see these as natural milestones, the chapters of a life well lived, but they were the chapters of our book, not necessarily theirs. Imposing that timeline on them is like trying to force a rose to bloom in the middle of winter. It is an act of impatience that damages the very thing we wish to see grow. My own life didn't follow a traditional path. I chose independence and a career over an early marriage, a choice that I am sure raised a few eyebrows in my own family. How could I now turn around and impose a set of expectations on my own children? I learned to trade my expectations for curiosity. When my daughter decided to move into a tiny apartment in the city instead of saving for a down payment on a house, the old me would have questioned her. The new me said, "That's a big move. What do you love most about the idea of living there?" Her answer was beautiful. She spoke of walkability, of community, of culture, of living a life that was rich in experience, not just in square footage. Her definition of home was different from mine, and it was just as valid. Our children are not here to create a sequel to our lives. They are here to write their own original story. Our role is to offer our unwavering support, to be the safe harbor they can always return to, not the lighthouse keeper demanding they follow a specific route. Our approval should be a constant, a given, not a prize they earn for checking boxes on a list that we created. Letting go of these 4 phrases wasn't just about changing my words. It was about fundamentally changing my perspective. It was about seeing my children not as extensions of myself, but as separate, whole individuals on their own sacred journey. I had to release my grip on the way I thought things should be, and instead embrace the beauty of how they are. It meant trading my role as manager for that of a consultant, available only when asked. It meant learning to listen more than I speak. And it meant trusting that the years of love and lessons I poured into them had taken root, trusting them to navigate their own storms, to make their own mistakes, and to build their own beautiful, unique lives.
The bond we have now is not built on obligation or expectation, but on the foundation of mutual respect and genuine admiration. It is quieter, more gentle, but infinitely stronger. And it all started by simply changing a few words. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today, for sharing this quiet space. The journey of transforming our relationships, as we've talked about, truly begins with looking inward. If you're ready to take that first gentle step on your own path of reflection, I've created something just for you. It's a free guide called The First 5 Questions, a gentle guide to rediscovering your story. It's designed to help you begin this exact process in a quiet and meaningful way. You can download it right now for free from the link in the description or at eldersechoes.com. Be gentle with yourself this week.